I think while you're in it, it's something I don't want to say I took it for granted, but I don't think you realize the magnitude of it because, you're in the gym, you're on the ice, you're doing all this stuff every day, and you don't really have time to take a step back and reflect on, how lucky or how much I was able to get out of the game of hockey at such a young age playing junior hockey. So it's nice to be able to do that now, kind of remove myself a little bit from my playing days. And it's nice to look back on those times.
Welcome to episode 136 of The Route, presented by White Whale Marketing. The Route is a glorified sports business coffee chat that has a new guest every episode as they share their experiences and route in sports. As always, I'm Christopher Nascimento, and let's get started. Before we begin, just a couple things to cover as always. First off, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see here on the top hand corner of the screen, it says The Route. Underneath that, it says at The Route Sports. That's our handle on all social media platforms. So obviously we're on all the good traditional ones, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok too. Check us out there. But most importantly, we're at The Route Sports on LinkedIn. And that's kind of cool because compared to other podcasts, maybe they're not there. But considering what we're talking about, who we're chatting with, it'd be great if you're a listener and you want to maybe expand, grow your network, start your network, or just maintain it. It's good to, connect with myself, connect with the guests, or connect with like-minded people that are, following the page or engaging with it as well. So check us out there at The Route Sports on all platforms. We do a little launch each Tuesday when the episode comes out where there's a unique magazine cover so you can get a little insight into that week's guest. And then in addition to that, the other platforms, we post clips every week in addition to the magazine cover. So just little cool tidbits so you can kind of get a teaser into the episode that you might want to listen to. So check us out there at The Route Sports. And as I mentioned in the beginning of that little spiel, we're on video as well, and that's on YouTube underneath the White Whale Marketing YouTube channel. So that's White Whale MKTG. And we have the Route playlist there where you can see all the episodes of the Route that were on video. So I think we started about 80 episodes ago, something like that. So you can check all those ones there and you can kind of just go through it all. And in addition, the YouTube channel then also has clips as well. So that's always good. And the last point then I'll just say is when you're doing all that, don't forget to follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars, do all the good stuff because it allows the podcast just to grow a little bit easier. And then we can kind of continue having these great conversations. So with that said, I can now get into today's guest. I'd now like to welcome someone who has been in and around hockey in various spaces, from development to scouting to now being the director of player recruitment and player services at the OHL Ontario Hockey League. If you're not familiar, Brodie Barrick, welcome to The Route. How's it going?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be here, chat a little bit about my journey and where I've been to and where I'm at now. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as I mentioned to you on LinkedIn when we first connected was, hey, you have a cool role. I know a lot of people, when they first kind of get into sports, they're like, oh, I'm not going to do the business side. I want to go into the player services side. You think of Jerry Maguire and all the good stuff, and that's where their mind goes to. Obviously, it's not that specifically, but you're kind of within that area. Maybe that's a lot of people who may be listening to the podcast, may want to hear more about that. So if you don't mind, let's kind of get into your route. Where did it begin? So maybe where did you go to school, and how did you end up in the role you're in today?
Yeah, sure. I think for my route, even have to jump, before I started school. So obviously, I was fortunate enough to play junior hockey and play in the Ontario Hockey League. And, during my time playing in the league, I kind of always envisioned, what a career in hockey could look like for me. I didn't think of myself as someone who was going to go to the NHL and necessarily make a living or make a career out of it as playing. And so I kind of always had, sports agency in my mind as something that I would want to do. And so as I went through my junior hockey career and played my last year junior out in Summerside, PEI, I started looking at, what my options for university would be, and was fortunate to be recruited to play varsity hockey at now Toronto Metropolitan University in downtown Toronto. And at that time, again, kind of just wanted to keep my options open as to, what my career could look like. And so I took the general arts, the arts and contemporary studies program at TMU. And the good thing about that was it allowed me to kind of, create my degree in whatever way I wanted to. And so I was able to do a major and 3 minors, again, to kind of keep the doors open. And so I did a minor in law, marketing, and criminology. And, at that time, again, was playing varsity hockey, was a student athlete, and was thinking about potentially doing law school after, and that'd be the first step into the sports agency business. And, kind of at that time too, as I was in my 3rd year of playing on the varsity hockey team, an opportunity came up to begin scouting in our league for one of our teams. And that was kind of at a time too, where I didn't know how much longer I wanted to continue playing hockey for. It's obviously a lot, 15 hours in the classroom a week, in addition to practices and games and road trips and all that stuff. So I was kind of just at the point where, I'd gotten a lot out of the game of hockey and thought it was time to move on, and was able to kind of do some other things in the student community during my time there. And then also get my foot in the door to the hockey management side of things. And I think that was kind of around the time I really had a shift in, I had grown up wanting to be in the sports agency business and do all of these things. And then being on the team and hockey management side of things, I think I really had a shift in, what I wanted to do if I were fortunate enough to have a career in hockey. And so my mind kind of shifted on that. And, it's no secret that I'm not making a full-time salary as a scout in the OHL. And so I was, working at the University of Guelph and then York University in alumni engagement and doing different things in that. And that was something, obviously in the university settings different than a hockey setting, but something that kind of aligned and I think helped get me to where I am today. And, having played hockey and going to university, do my undergrad at TMU and my master's at the University of Guelph after, I always had a strong affiliation with the things that I was an alumni of. And so I think that helped me a lot in my work, both at the University of Guelph and York University, but also helped, I think, kind of land this role with that relationship building side of things, whether it be alumni or player recruitment and players coming into our league now. And so I think those things, all kind of built up over time, and really was just kind of a perfect snowball to help get this job that I'm in now. And obviously really fortunate to be a couple months in working at the OHL and full-time in hockey was always something that I kind of dreamed of doing. In what capacity, again, as I went through, I didn't really know, but I'm glad that all roads have led to here for now.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's kind of the beauty about this podcast is there's already so much to unpack just from just sharing your route. So I can't wait to get into it all. So if you don't mind, what I typically like doing is we're going to go from, beginning to end, right? Or not end where we currently are now. So I kind of want to jump to your time in the OHL, right? Because I think that's kind of a unique experience, especially with a lot of people in sports. Some part or another, I'm sure they participated in a sport, but where most of us are probably gym class heroes, maybe high school, et cetera, right? OHL is a little bit of a different standard. So do you mind maybe just providing some insight? What was it like to be a junior hockey player in Canada?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, obviously everyone grows up playing minor hockey and your dreams to play in the NHL. But really for me, being an Ontario kid, I thought it was more realistic and maybe it was so stretched at times, but my dream was really always to play in the OHL. And so, I played all my minor hockey in Welland, Ontario, where I grew up for the Welland Tigers, and was fortunate enough to be drafted by Sarnia in the OHL back in 2010. And, played a couple years of development in Pittsburgh and then Carleton Place out in the Ottawa area before finally signing and making the team in Sarnia. And we were just talking to a few people in the office. Actually, I went back to Sarnia, for Game 4 of their Western Conference Finals against London recently, and that was for me the first time I've been back in Sarnia since I played there a number of years ago. And not for any reason that I had a bad experience. I had a great time playing in the OHL, and now I think have the perspective to look back and think of how fortunate I was, not only to play in the best junior hockey league in the world, but benefit from the scholarship package and all the supports and resources that are available in our league. And a lot of the stuff that I just mentioned is kind of what I do in my day job now, and talking to our players coming into our league who might not be aware of everything you benefit, obviously, aside from playing in the best junior hockey league in the world. And so it's fun now. You can look up what my stats were. I was never, never the best player or goalie in the league when I played. And so, all that aside, I think it's pretty cool, watching NHL playoffs and you see a guy like McDavid come down the wing at 100 miles an hour. And, at one point in time, I was on the same ice as him, and he may have scored on me, but that's okay. And so, yeah, it's cool, I think, now being a little bit more removed from it, to look back and think of how fortunate I was to play, like I said, in the best junior hockey league in the world. And, the stats are what they are in terms of NHL draft picks and players playing in the NHL who come out of the OHL. And so to be a small piece of that in my career, really, I owe everything to where I'm at now to my time playing in the OHL, and really set me up, to go to university after and get my degree and then do my master's and work a couple jobs and then be back here now. I don't think I would have had these opportunities had I not gone through the experience of playing in the OHL. And so, again, really fortunate. And I think while you're in it, it's something I don't want to say I took it for granted, but I don't think you realize the magnitude of it, because, you're in the gym, you're on the ice, you're doing all this stuff every day, and you don't really have time to take a step back and reflect on, how lucky or how much I was able to get out of the game of hockey at such a young age, playing junior hockey. So it's nice to be able to do that now, kind of remove myself a little bit from my playing days. And it's nice to look back on those times.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I think that's something we'll get into, just in regards to how your experience being a player with the OHL now helps you with your current role. But kind of sticking to where we're at now, I was just trying to think at the top of my mind, because I remember when I was younger, the 2008 NHL draft was in Ottawa. Stamkos went first, Sarnia. So I was trying to think, like, who would I know that you might have played with? Was that around Yakupov, or is that after Yakupov?
Yeah, Yakupov would have been there. We never played on the same team, but would have been at training camps together. But Alex Galchenyuk was on my team. Guys like Connor Murphy, Nikolai Goldobin, Tony DeAngelo. So, for playing on two teams in Sarnia who never won a playoff game, we had quite the crew of guys who have gone on to have pro careers, in the NHL or overseas. And so, it's again fun to look back, not only in the guys that I got to play with, and I was fortunate to play with a lot of very talented players, but also the guys that were obviously in the league at the same time. The list goes on and on of all the guys who have come through the OHL and now gone on to be very, very successful.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Quite the names: Tony DeAngelo, Yakupov, Galchenyuk. So that's very cool. And then I guess just building on that too, one of the things you mentioned when you were discussing your route initially was how, obviously in your mind you're trying to make the OHL, but then you never really thought you'd become an NHLer, right? That's kind of something you maybe, let's say, had the foresight for. And I find that very interesting, because having worked with some athletes and then just having the discussions, being in sports and talking to people at different agencies, even some of the bigger ones, or even just to people at teams, different leagues, etc. Everyone always has the similar discussion where that's a hard conversation to have with a potential athlete, right? Where kind of saying, hey, like, realistically, your professional career, no matter how good you are, even if you're McDavid, you're probably not going to be playing hockey for another 20 years, let's say, right? As soon as you hit 40, most likely, and then you probably have another 40 years of life, right? So what are you going to do afterwards? So having that foresight was kind of a cool perspective. And was there a reason for that? And I'm sure that's probably something that allowed you to be now successful in this current role, is because you're able to see that. Where a lot of the times I find people end up just getting that tunnel vision, right? They're like, no, this is where I'm at the moment, and I am going to become, Connor McDavid, or hey, I am going to make the NHL, and that's how I'm going to make my career earnings. So what made you think that?
Yeah, I think for me, I was always pretty realistic with myself. You compare yourself to people all the time. And I don't think that, was healthy for me when I was playing to have those comparisons so often. But at the end of the day, like for me, like I said, I kind of always dreamed about playing in the OHL and felt that I was playing with house money at that point when I was fortunate enough to do so. And so I felt like, I kind of reached the pinnacle of what I wanted to do in the game of hockey, and everything else after that was a bonus. And so I've probably, at times a little too hard on myself through my playing career, and never wanted to, I guess, come off as failing at something if I had those expectations too high. And so that might have, you could say that was a negative thing and maybe limited my potential as a player. But for me, I just thought, having those realistic expectations for myself, not only in my playing career, but afterwards as well, was beneficial for me. And, you're right. Sometimes it is hard to, look in the mirror or have conversations with people and be told or realize you're not good enough or not as good as some of the other players you're playing against or fighting for spots or whatever it may be. And so I think for me, just having those realistic expectations for myself allowed me to be successful and deal with, some of those failures or the times that, you may have to have hard conversations and face realities that you may not have expected coming or things like that. So I think for me, just having those, then the realistic expectations, but not to say that I didn't strive and put the effort in to try to go to the NHL. Obviously, if I was able to do that, I would have for sure. But, we know what the numbers are in terms of how many people are able to reach that highest level. And I'm okay with looking back now and very, like I said, thankful and grateful for what I was able to get out of the game of hockey. And, I was able to do something that I think a lot of people dreamed and wish that they had the opportunity to. So it's humbling to look back on that now. And, I'm okay that I didn't make the NHL as a player. Like I said, was able to accomplish and work towards something that a lot of people, would have loved to do. And I don't take that for granted for sure.
Yeah, and I guess just building on that too, right? After your OHL experiences, that's when you got offered, or you then end up playing varsity hockey in Canada. What was that like? Because I know, well, just building on what you're discussing earlier, was you did a major and 3 minors is what I wrote down, and I was like, that's wild in my eyes, right? Where you did marketing, law, criminology, law, maybe there's some overlap there, so that kind of makes sense. But why did you decide to go 3 varying ones? And you mind maybe just building on that? Because I know sometimes that is a question that kind of comes up with people, right? Whether they're listening, if they're on the younger side, they go, hey, where should I attend? What should I study? And should I then go do, let's say, a sport management master's or something? So what made you decide, hey, let me just try a little bit of everything while at school?
Yeah, for sure. And even looking back now, it probably was a little ambitious of myself to do. But I went to Toronto Metropolitan University mainly for the hockey side of it, and at the time got into the Arts and Contemporary Studies program as a mature student because that was really, I think, the easiest way for me to get into a program. And then once I got into my first year, again, was still kind of figuring out what I wanted to do afterwards. And the cool part of that program is really, the mandatory courses or the core courses you have to take are a lot lighter than, say a business program or something like that would be. And then you kind of fill the spaces around it with electives and things you wanted to do. And then when I saw the opportunity to complete some minors, that's when I really started to do some research on what I was interested in at the time. I always found, I did way better in the courses in university. I'm sure a lot of people can really relate to this too, that I actually enjoyed the content rather than I was told I had to show up for that class and take it to be able to graduate. And so I did some research and looking at things that I knew I was going to be interested in to obviously benefit from them and then also do better in them. And so, again, back to the point about the agency kind of side of things, I had always had, law school in mind. And so, obviously, kind of the law and criminology minors, made sense, I think, for me. And then I guess marketing is kind of a little off the board if you're relating it back to those other two. But again, I think I had taken a marketing course just as an elective to fill some space, and enjoyed it and thought it would be beneficial for me really in whatever career path I went in. If I went into, do an MBA after, I would have had some marketing background. Obviously did my master's of leadership at the University of Guelph. And so, that's something that kind of came up in that too. And really, I think when we think about marketing, we think about the business side of things. That's obviously what you learn in school, but really for me, just to kind of expand my network and learn how to market myself, or, now in a recruitment role for the OHL, how we can, market our league. Really, I know we have great marketing departments and business side of things here too. But if I can add any insight or things that I learned into the work that we do, I think it's beneficial. And so, I did 5 years of my undergrad degree because as a varsity athlete, you have 5 years of eligibility. And so I figured rather than, just taking the minimum 3 courses a semester and be that you need to be a full-time student, I would take a little bit closer to what that full-time, 5 classes a semester course load would look like. And of course, having the education package from the OHL and having my tuition costs paid for, I really wanted to maximize what I was able to get out of that rather than just kind of fly through, do the bare minimum and get a degree and move on afterwards. So again, looking back, 3 minors was probably a little bit overboard, but I think it was good for me to maintain that structure and work towards something that, might have been kind of a lofty goal at the time, but I think set me up to go on and do a master's afterwards, and kind of went right from my undergrad degree into that MA leadership program, and then afterwards. And so, they don't necessarily all align together, and really even, from the law and criminology side of things don't align with the work that I do today. But really, I just was in the mindset that, I wanted to keep kind of all options open and set myself up best for success in the future, whatever that may be.
Yeah, no, and that makes a ton of sense where now that you kind of position it that where, you had the 5 years eligibility was covered by, the OHL, why not try to get as much, learning that you can in a short amount of time? So that makes a ton of sense. And one of the things that you said there that kind of I related to easily just was, from the marketing perspective, you want to know how to network yourself and also just say, let's say, brand yourself. And I was initially in accounting. Then I decided to go into marketing while at school. And I was like, hey, I have no experience in marketing. So how am I ever going to get a job as a student? And then I kind of positioned myself as a sports marketer. I made this personal brand. Hey, Chris Nascimento, sports marketer. And then things just went off from there where I ended up learning so much more and people were connecting with me because they're like, oh, hey, Chris, he's a sports marketer, right? And I ended up getting a job, which kind of then leads into the next line of questioning, just was in regards to scouting. It was actually a hockey app that was trying to help scouts not have these big paper pads and kind of using an iPad instead. So I kind of wanted to ask you about that because I know when I was doing that role in university that, came from marketing myself, what was it like being a scout? Because I remember going, let's say, to 67s games and we're showing some of the scouts our app, and obviously some of the founders, they already knew the scouts. And some of the stories they would say just in regards to their weekend, how many games they would have to go watch and the timing of it all. Do you mind me just want to talk about the life of a scout and what that was like? Because it was crazy, like how the hours I was hearing.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if it's necessarily the glorified position that some people might think of, but just from kind of that hours perspective. But for me, I mean, kind of born and raised into hockey, and it was always a big part of my life. And so when I stopped playing and went right into scouting, I really just filled, those hours I'd be in the weight room or on a bus ride to wherever it may be, with driving and scouting games. And so, I think I spent some time maybe last year just looking back on my years scouting and, the different games and tournaments and all of these things that you attend. And in addition to the scouting piece, that was on top of, working a full-time job. And so you put the 9 to 5 hours in or whatever they may be, and then go home and have dinner and see the family. And then maybe, head out to a 9:30 game in Oshawa or something where you're driving, maybe an hour or two, and the game ends at 11 and you're home by midnight and kind of up and at 'em the next day again. And, by no means am I complaining about that grind. I think it's pretty fortunate to be able to do that for the game of hockey. I know a lot of people have roles or other jobs where they have it, definitely worse than I did. But yeah, at the end of the day, you're looking back on a season of scouting where you're at, 350 games through the course of a season, and some tournament days where, you get there for the first game at 8 o'clock and you're leaving the parking lot at 11 o'clock at night. And, you put in 15 or 16 different games or parts of games throughout the day, and trying to, keep track of all these players and make sure you got your lists in order and reports in and all of these things. And so, for me, I always wanted to be in hockey. And so I loved and looked forward to, going out to those games and, having your opinion on players heard and, really shaping the future of a team, and also kind of filled the void. And people ask me all the time if I miss playing hockey. And I think, I say no, because I went from, I think the thing I'd miss the most of playing hockey is being around the guys and being a part of a team and, those relationships. And so for me, I went from doing that on a daily basis and grinding, like I said, in the gym and practices and things like that, and being around the guys every day. And then transitioned from that into the scouting side of things, where you're part of a team as well. And that kind of really just filled the void that I had from that. I just didn't have to, put the gear on every day and have pucks shot at me and things like that. So it was nice for me to jump right into that. I think I'd look back on the end of my playing career a lot differently, and probably miss it a lot more if I wasn't able to do that and jump into the scouting side of things. And so it I think really helped that. Obviously, looking back on scouting, you see these guys when they're 15 years old before they're coming into our league. And it's cool to look back now that, I remember being in Vic Village Arena in Scarborough to watch that Don Mills team play with Shane Wright and Brennan Othman and Brent Clark. And, it was I think a Tuesday night at 9:15 game or something. And there's 6 rows of people deep standing at the glass, and the stands packed, and it might have just been a regular season or GTHL playoff game. So it's cool to look back on those times and see you got to see them before they are what they are now, and they continue. You could say that about watching them in the OHL even. You get to see them before they'd be the NHL superstar before. So to be able to see these guys and see really how good they are at such a young age was pretty cool. And obviously, like I said, to be able to shape or have your opinion shape the future of an organization is pretty cool too. And, the debate and the back and forth and in scouts meetings or the draft room and things like that was something that I really enjoyed being a part of. Obviously, I'll miss that being in my role now, but I like, being able to build the relationships with these parents and families and players more closely now in this role. So I enjoy my time scouting. I think did 5 or 6 years before taking this role. So really from the time I stopped playing after my 3rd year at Toronto Metropolitan to now. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Like you said, a lot of kilometers on the car and a lot of long nights and trips to tournaments and things like that. But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, just you talking about it there. Some of the things you're saying, like, hey, maybe that app would have been perfect if it continued on. Where I know it would format things where, let's say you saw Brent Clark 5 times that year, it would just then give you an average. And as soon as you were done clicking everything, because it was based off of the standard sheet, it would then create a report for you and then send it directly to your email account or something. Okay. So I was like, as you're saying that, I was like, maybe it would have worked out if it continued on.
Yeah.
But no, good stuff. And then, you're kind of then touching on, your current role. So before we kind of dive into it, how did it come about? And then maybe you can tell us a bit more what it entails on the day-to-day.
Sure, yeah. So, I knew Kyle Pereira, who was in the role before me, had left the OHL at the end of last calendar year, and was fortunate, to have somewhat of a relationship with Kyle, and also have a relationship with a few people in the office. Ray Hollowell, who's the director of finance here at the OHL, actually billeted my uncle many years ago when my uncle played for the Toronto Marlies in the OHL. And so obviously a kind of close family friend there, and also worked with Ray with the team that I scouted for. And so he had let me know, that the opportunity and the position was open, and asked if it'd kind of be something I was interested in. And if so, he would, pass a resume along to Dave Branch and Ted Baker. And, got a call from Dave and went through the interview process. And really for me was to learn more about the role, what it would entail, and see if it would be a good fit for me, which obviously after I went through the interview process and all of that, I got really excited about the role, but didn't, I was trying to let myself not be too excited because, there's probably a lot of competition for a role like this. And I didn't want to get too excited about it and then, not end up getting it. And fortunately I was able to get the role, and it's been really exciting. A couple months, as I mentioned, started at the beginning of March. And so it was a busy time from when I started to the priority selection, which took place at the end of April. So kind of crammed in about 8 months of work in 2 months as best as we could. But like I said, was fortunate in the game of hockey. I tell people all the time, really the biggest thing that I took from my time playing was the relationships that you make. And you never really know, when paths will cross again. And was fortunate enough to have someone here that asked if I was interested, and obviously passed along a resume, and kind of went through the process from there. So it was exciting to go through. Never really did I think that I would get the job, and again, that might be back to what we were talking about earlier, me being a little bit too hard on myself at times. But obviously I was fortunate that my experience and the things that I've done lended me to have this opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And then how does it work on the day-to-day? I know you kind of mentioned it briefly throughout where, it's like building a relationship with parents, let's say. Obviously the title is Director of Player Recruitment and Player Services. So I'm sure there's obviously maybe some conflict in regards to some players, maybe more so American players wanting to go to, let's say NCAA instead. So how does that end up working? So what does it look like, and what do you do typically?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll kind of break it down into the two parts of my title. So the player recruitment side of things, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's really ensuring that all draft eligible players or players who want to come play in the OHL have the information about our league. And so throughout the course of the season, I'll do presentations at league showcases for all of our minor hockey partners. We'll do team specific presentations. So we'll go into, each team specifically and do a presentation for them. And then a lot of meetings with, some of the top players, whether they be Ontario or US born kids and their families, and whether that be, going to their house, going for coffee, going out for dinner, and doing a little bit deeper dive on the OHL as a whole. And as I mentioned earlier, all of the things that go into it, we talk a lot about the development stats on the ice, and NHL drafts and NHL rosters, and players coming through the OHL and moving on to that highest level. But we talk, at equal length about the education and scholarship package that every player who comes through the OHL receives and benefits from. Player environment, player support, and then player services, obviously being the other side of my role. So all of our partnerships, with places like the Canadian Mental Health Association, with the Talk Today program. We just launched another partnership with an OHL alumni, Ben Finelli, and his Heroic Minds platform. We have partnerships with different sexual assault centers in our local communities for our OHL Onside program. And so from a player services side of thing, obviously maintaining those relationships and building out what each of those will look like for our teams, whether it be workshops, training sessions, ongoing leadership opportunities for our players and staff, and ensuring that our teams provide these supports and services to our players, and the players know where to access them and are going through all the trainings and things that they need to do to have really the players' safety the forefront of our mind. And of course, not just from an on-ice perspective, but in our communities, in the classroom, on social media, all of these different places. And so that's kind of the breakdown, I think, the two sides of the role, but really they work hand in hand. When we're doing presentations on the OHL, we can't talk about the player environment and what it's like playing in the OHL without highlighting all of these services and the supports that our players have. And really it's, I think as much or more for the parents to hear, even the players. I mean, I look back at myself as a 15-year-old kid and these kids now going through their draft year, they want to see the highlight reel goals and talk about what sticks they're going to use and how many fans come out to the games. And like I said, I was kind of in the same boat when I was their age too. But looking back now, the things that I, again, took the most out of the game were the education package, some of these supports and services that we have available to us as players. Those are the things that I think set you up, beyond the game of hockey if you're not one of those few who are fortunate enough to make a career as a player. And so really highlighting and being a resource for these families and players throughout the season. I know a lot of them are going through the draft year for the first time. Some of them may have older brothers who have gone through it before and have a little bit of knowledge on the situation and what it's like. But, things change too. And from the time they may have had an older brother go through it to now. And so really try to, make sure that all players have the information they need to make an informed decision on what's best for their future, whether that be playing in the OHL or going another route. Obviously, we want to make sure that all of our players, both in Canada and the US, and the top players are coming to our league and, continuing to allow us to be the best junior hockey league in the world and the number one development league in the world for for guys going on and playing at a higher level. But then making sure that, the families and parents know that there's a lot more to it than just the game of hockey, and talking about all those things, the added benefits you get from playing in our league.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense and kind of a cool way to, let's say, wrap it up before we get into our final two questions where, you kind of shared your whole route today, right? And what you're currently doing now as well. So I appreciate that and thank you. But then what I like to ask every guest at the end of the episode, just kind of put everything in kind of a closed loop is, we talked about everything to date so far. So I like to say, I've been saying this for 137 episodes now. I'm going to live until I'm 103. Right? I'm going to be on a rocking chair thinking about all the good times. I'm going to need the podcast to remind me of a couple. So let's say you're in the same position. You're 103, you're on a rocking chair, and you're thinking about your career specifically. What's one story to date that's going to stand out when you're on that rocking chair at 103? You're still going to remember, and you're going to be like, wow, that was a cool moment. And I can't believe I got to do that for work.
Yeah, I think, even if I'm looking back just to what I've been able to do in a couple months in this role, it'll be those relationships that have been made with some of these guys that, will go on to be very successful NHL hockey players, and, have them reach back out and say thanks for something that I was able to help them with over the years, or, parents and things like that, the paths that will cross, throughout my time in hockey and of course theirs. And so just really the people that I've been able to meet in the game of hockey. And again, probably not just one story, but I could go on for days about all the great people I've been able to meet. And I think, your first thought is the guys that, go on to be really good NHL players and superstars in that league. But, I also hold the relationships with my teammates and GMs and coaches who, aren't NHL superstars and are maybe even closer friends and likely closer friends I was able to make in the game of hockey, and those relationships that will stick with me forever. And so, yeah, I've said it before today, and I've said it 100 times, probably this week already, that the biggest thing for me that I'm, kind of look back and I'm fortunate enough to take out of the game of hockey are the relationships and the people that, will stick with you through thick and thin, really. And it's hard, you play on so many different teams, and you have all these teammates and guys you're best friends with, and then you go different ways, and it's harder to stay in touch with everyone and see everyone as often. But it's nice that when you do get back together or have these run-ins with people, it's kind of like you pick it up where you left off however many years ago. And so for me, that's the biggest thing, and something I'll always hold close to me is the relationships I made along the way. My best friends in life are people who I've met through the game of hockey. I met my fiance through the game of hockey as she was playing at Toronto Metropolitan at the same time that I was, and so really everything in my life, one way or another, has come through the game of hockey. And so I think that's really the coolest thing, just to be back in it now and still being, pretty young at 28. I'm excited about all the relationships that I'll continue to make and build over the years. And so I think, when I look back, when everything's said and done, it'll be just really grateful for all the people I've met and the people who've come in and out of my life, and the relationships that I'm able to make and hold closely.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the cool thing about that question, right? It almost puts over like let's say a theme for your career to date, right? So that's kind of cool. And the last question I now have, we went to the future, 103-year-old Brodie. Now let's go back to 15-year-old Brodie, about to get drafted for the OHL, or maybe you're about to attend TMU for the first time. What is maybe something that you've now learned since that time of your life that you're like, hey, like that's something I wish I knew earlier? So let's say a piece of advice that you can, share with a younger version of yourself.
I would say to enjoy it and enjoy the ride. Really, it's something I thought that I was doing in the moment, and looking back now, I don't think I did it as well as I could have. And it's something that I like to tell, every one of the players or families or parents that I talk to in this role now is, your draft year can be stressful or nerve-wracking at times. You show up in the rink and there's scouts from 20 OHL teams and other leagues as well. They're watching you, and it can be nerve-wracking. But if you're not enjoying it, then really what's the point of doing any of it? And so I think for me, it sounds cliche to say at times, but life is pretty fragile, and you don't know, what's going to come next. And so for me, just trying and something working hard every day really to do, but enjoy the ride, enjoy what you're able to go through. Those days come and go a lot quicker. Yeah. I mean, I remember just a short story here, not to go too far off on a tangent, but playing in Carleton Place Junior A, and we had just got eliminated from the playoffs, and our fifth-year defenseman, Dustin DeRue, I remember, he was an intimidating guy. He got traded over to our team, throughout the season, or maybe just before the season started, and, really wanted to win and was intense, but, kind of fun-loving guy. And, to see him be emotional after his last junior hockey game, and to say, specifically to the young 16, 17-year-old kids to enjoy it because it's going to be over before you know it. And you're kind of sitting there like, I have 3 or 4 years left. What are you talking about, kind of thing. And now I'm sitting here talking to you, and my junior hockey career has been over for, I was drafted 13 years ago just the other day. And so you hear people say, enjoy it, it's going to be over before you know it. And you don't really think too much of it at the time, but it goes by really quick. So it's a lot of fun to look back on those times, but you almost want to make sure you enjoy them more while you're in them rather than looking back on them.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think that's kind of a good way to end it all. And I think that's kind of applicable, whether it's, a sports career, business career, or even just life as a whole, right? Where I know a lot of times, even myself, I'm like, hey, like I just want to get to, you're super successful, you have the cars, the houses, the family, etc. But in reality, then when you talk to people that are in those positions, you're like, oh no, it's when, let's say you're working in sports business, it's the time you're setting up those pylons on the side of the field. Or I know when I was in university, I was working at the stadium here, and we were doing parking. Me and all my buddies were doing it. And I remember one night we're about to be done, and all my buddies were like, hey, like this is probably gonna be some of the best moments of our life, where we're making money and we're enjoying it, we're laughing all work long, and we're literally just working at a sports stadium, right? And then before you know, you'll be in a cubicle or whatever else, right? You end up doing. So no, definitely, I think a cool piece of advice, regardless of what you're doing. But no, I really appreciate it, Brodie. Thank you for sharing everything. Unless there's anything else you'd like to say, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun having you reach out and talking a little bit about myself. Something I don't love to do all the time, but it's good to share the experience. And if my experience can maybe inspire or help someone else out, I'm glad. And it was fun to be on today, and it was a great time.
Yeah, I think that's most guests. They're not too good, or they don't like talking about themselves. Let me say,
Yeah,
but
sure.
yeah. No, but I think that's kind of the beauty of it. So yeah, thank you so much, and that's it for episode 137. Thank you again to Brodie, and tune in for next week's episode. See you next time.